When buying a flagship smartphone, we all know that the devices that we buy aren't all created equal. Some are large, some are small. Some have 2 cameras on the back, and while others only have 1. But most of the time, they all share one thing in common: a budget-breaking sticker price. But since all flagship devices aren't created equal, Xiaomi thinks that flagship smartphone prices should be different as well, even if its spec list includes all the latest and greatest tech. The Xiaomi Mi 6 is just as powerful as the HTC U11 and the Samsung Galaxy S8, since it features the same Snapdragon 835 chip on the inside. But unlike its competitors, the base model comes with 6 gigs of RAM. The Mi 6 also breaks with convention by using what some would consider to be a small display. The 5.1-inch panel is only 1080p, but that's more than adequate for its size. It may not offer a super high resolution density like its main competitors do, but the panel itself is gorgeous, bright, and is a pleasure to use indoors and outdoors. Add in 64 gigs of storage, a 3300 mAh battery, a fingerprint sensor, 8 megapixel front-facing selfie cam, dual camera on the back with 12 megapixel sensors, and you would assume that the Xiaomi Mi 6 sells for at least the same $650 that HTC is charging for the U11. But it's not, far from it in fact. If you guessed $500, you'd still be off the mark by nearly 15%, since the Mi 6 only costs $430, and less than €400 if you buy it in Europe. And that's even $40 less than the new OnePlus 5. So the big question is, can a $430 flagship smartphone actually compete with a mainstream device that costs $200 to $300 more? Surprisingly, the Mi 6's price has no impact on the phone's performance. The phone is fast, powerful, and can multitask better than any other smartphone I've ever used. Seriously, you can play a game in the morning and then use a half dozen apps throughout the day, and then jump back to the game exactly where you left off 6 hours later without it having to reload. The software experience is good as well. It's running on Android 7.1.1 with the May security patch, with Xiaomi's UI layered on top. In traditional Xiaomi fashion, that means you don't get an app drawer, but what you do get is an extremely customizable UI. No matter what your tastes are, there's a theme to match your style. And the customized looks aren't just for the home screen, since all the themes actually customize all the native apps within Xiaomi's custom UI. But if you want to make this phone truly your own, there are dozens of other customization options at your fingertips. You also have the option to lock out apps on a system level so that people using your phones can't access those specific apps. Or you can clone an app, allowing you to use 2 instances of the same app in case you have more than one Facebook account, or if your kids want to play SimCity Build It without messing up your own city. All these little features add up to an experience that can be completely customized to the way that you want to use your phone. With all this power and customization options within the software, you might think that this phone would suffer from poor battery life. Well, the opposite is actually true. The 3350 mAh battery is massive for a phone of this size in fact, and the Mi 6 only has a 5.1-inch display, meaning that you can use this phone for a good 16 hours with more than 6 hours of screen on time before it throws in the towel. That brings us to the camera. As much as I love the performance of this phone, the camera is just as good. The main camera has 2 12-megapixel sensors with phase detect autofocus. The first uses a 27mm f1.8 lens with 4-axis optical image stabilization, and the second sensor is paired with a 52mm f2.6 lens, which gives you 2x optical zoom. If that sounds familiar at all, it's because it's pretty much what's offered by the iPhone 7 Plus. And like most other smartphones with dual sensors, this one here also enables a portrait mode, which uses the data from both sensors to digitally blur out the background of your image. The effect is great, giving you stunning images which look like they were taken with a DSLR with a much larger imaging sensor. The only downside is that it doesn't perform that well in low light. Regular photos with the main sensor turn out great though. Images are sharp and the autofocus is quick. The auto white balance is typically on the colder side, but it's not noticeable unless you take pictures side by side with another device. The Mi 6's low light performance could be a little bit better. When the lighting is too low, you lose a lot of detail in the shadow, and the ISO gets bumped up extremely high. The 8-megapixel selfie camera takes really good pictures in daylight, and surprisingly good pictures in low light as well, even better than some of its competitors. On its own, the Xiaomi Mi 6 is a phenomenal device. It has a great camera, class-leading performance, and battery life that can last a day and a half if you're not a heavy user. It's also one of the only flagship devices with a small display, something that I really appreciate. But the phone's real killer feature is its $430 price point. Let that sink in for a minute. Why spend $700 or even more on a flagship device when you can get one that's just as good at a fraction of the cost? It may not have that fancy 18:9 aspect ratio display or an iris scanner, but the Xiaomi Mi 6 should be at the top of your list if you're looking for a flagship smartphone that doesn't break the bank. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to follow me personally on Twitter, you can do so at Nick M. Gray. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And if you are interested in buying the Xiaomi Mi 6, I have a couple links for you in the description below.